The cure couldn't scale. The Fireflies were never going to save the world. Look at the Salt Lake City Hospital, flickering lights, one operating room, and a girl on a table. That is not the infrastructure of a global miracle. That is a desperate clinic with a deadline, running on scavenged generators. Even if their plan worked, a cure for cordyceps is not a pill you press in a basement. It is cultures, labs, trained staff, refrigeration, transport, viable doses, and a chain of trust in a world built on theft. No cold chain, no distribution. One batch becomes two problems: who gets it and who dies trying to take it. A vaccine does not rebuild roads. It does not erase raiders. It does not make Federa checkpoints disappear. And here's the uncomfortable part. The Fireflies do not need to cure everyone. They only need to cure enough people to become the new government. A handful of protected zones, a few proof cases, a legend that spreads faster than the fungus. So Joel did not just stop a surgery, he may have stopped a currency. A miracle you cannot scale becomes something you can trade. If a cure cannot reach the world, was it ever meant to? Patient Zero was a lab. Patient Zero was not a person. It was a room. Daryl Dixon lands in France and suddenly the rules shift. Faster movement, stranger behavior, whispers of experiments, syringes and vials like the apocalypse, still has paperwork, broken whiteboards, burned notes, not a shelter, an unfinished project. The setting screams clinical, not accidental. The franchise keeps circling the same breadcrumb trail. French scientists, biomedical research, variants that do not look random. It is like the story is daring you to stop asking who started it and start asking who was allowed to keep working after it started. Because a lab does not just create a virus. A lab creates protocols, freezers, sample labels, shipping containers. And if anything leaked, the first true infection might have been a chain of custody, a conference badge, a shared flight, a courier box that never got scanned, a fridge that stayed powered for one more week. However, the outbreak went global too fast for one building to be the whole answer, which is the point. Patient Zero becomes a comforting myth. One villain, one mistake, one moment. But what if it was a network from day one? If the origin is a system, who signed the first order? The Busan connection is real. Hyosan was not the first outbreak. It was the second headline. In All of Us Are Dead, the chaos feels weirdly rehearsed. Rapid quarantines, soldiers, and masks. The language of containment like someone has been here before. Then the show winks at Train to Busan, and most people treat it like a cute reference. But imagine it is not a joke. Imagine Busan was the prototype. Fast, relentless, infected. A single spark in a controlled environment. Panic, misinformation, a government that learns one lesson. Never let the public see the origin. Bury the footage. Lock the files. Now cut to Hyosan. A school, not a station. A virus that behaves like a refined version of the same nightmare. And the most suspicious detail is how quickly the story shifts blame to one guy and his family tragedy, because that is how you seal a scandal. You make it personal. You make it small. You bury the paperwork behind grief. Sure, different worlds, different stories, totally officially unrelated, except cover-ups always look the same. Isolate, label, erase, repeat. If Busan was the rehearsal and Yosan was the real test, which city is next in the timeline? Nobody admits exists yet. The outbreak births a cult. The rage virus does not just kill people, it creates believers. 28 years is long enough for quarantine to turn into mythology. Borders become sacred lines. Warning tape becomes scripture overnight. Hand-painted symbols become protection. Kids grow up hearing rules like prayers. Do not go out after dusk. Do not travel alone. Do not make noise. Do not trust the mainland. In a world like that, a leader does not need food or medicine to gain power. They need a story. A reason the infected are still here. A reason you should obey. A reason your fear is holy, not irrational. So the theory is simple. The outbreak does not accidentally produce a cult. It inevitably does. Someone learns the rhythms of the danger. They know which screams draw a horde, which routes stay quiet, which gestures keep people calm. Then they rebrand that knowledge as prophecy. But cults need stability, and the rage world is pure instability. That is why the cult is not built around the infected. It is built around fear management, rituals as safety protocols, faith as crowd control. If someone can speak the language of the virus, are they surviving it or steering it? Bones claim territory. The bones are not memorials. They are markers. When a story puts an ossuary front and center, skulls stacked, ribs arranged, a temple built from what is left, it invites one question: who benefits from all that placement? Here is the theory. The infected have started mapping the world. world, not with words, but with remains. A boundary made of femurs, a trail made of teeth, a warning tower that says, without saying anything, this is ours. Even wind chimes made of bone would do the job. A sign you can hear. That sounds impossible, until you remember how animals claim space. Scent, scratches, nests. Now swap in a virus that drives bodies toward patterns, toward repetition, toward routes that worked last time. The bones become the only signal that survives weather, fire, and time. Of course, it could just be humans doing what humans do, making meaning out of horror. Survivors stacking skulls to feel in control, turning grief into architecture. But if the bone structures keep appearing in the same shapes, in the same places, around the same roots, that is not art, that is behavior. So what is scarier? A world of mindless rage, or a world where the rage is learning borders? The plague was a weapon in Ashin of the North. The plague did not spread, it was deployed. That is the theory. Kingdom gives you a resurrection plant, a parasite, and a method that requires hands. Someone has to harvest it, prepare it, administer it, and choose the timing. Accidents do not come with instructions. Now look at the politics surrounding it. Famine, rival clans, a court built on secrets, and a disease that conveniently turns bodies into an army the moment power needs a reset. Ashin's story makes it even darker. Vengeance is personal, yes, but the mechanism is scalable. You can seed a village, wait for winter, and let panic travel faster than any messenger. You can weaponize superstition. You can turn a border conflict into a collapse. The problem is obvious. A weapon like this does not stay aimed. It eats the user, which is exactly why it works. Nobody wants to claim it. Nobody can admit they pulled the trigger because the trigger never stops. So the plague becomes the perfect tool for a hidden hand, plausible deniability, total chaos, and a kingdom begging for new rulers. If the outbreak was engineered as a political reset, who benefits most when history gets eaten alive? Raccoon City was a cover-up. Raccoon City was not unlucky. It looked selected. A company town with one employer, a police force on the payroll, a hospital underfunded and overworked, and an evacuation that comes late, just late enough to trap the evidence. Even the exit routes feel curated. Umbrella does not just cause disasters. Umbrella manages narratives. A sudden outbreak is messy. A controlled outbreak is clean. It clears files, deletes witnesses, and turns a decade of illegal research into a single night of tragic contamination. Watch the timing. The sirens, the roadblocks, the sense that someone knew where to point people and where not to. Even the monsters feel like inventory that escaped a warehouse, not something nature made. But why leave any survivors at all? Why let Leon, Claire, and the others walk out with stories? Because survivors are not just a risk, they are an asset. A hero story is the best cover-up there is. You do not bury the truth, you replace it with a legend. So Raccoon City becomes a controlled burn, and the witnesses become characters in the official version. If the cover-up needed a few people to live, who chose which names got to be on that list? The heist is a time loop test. They have done this before. You can feel it. In Army of the Dead, the mission plays like a rerun. The same beats, the same betrayals, the same "we almost made it" rhythm. Then the movie drops its strangest breadcrumbs. Bodies in the vault that look like earlier versions of the crew, and tiny details that repeat like a glitch. The banter lands like deja vu. The theory? This is not just a heist. It is a loop, not magic, not destiny. A test. Imagine Vegas as a sealed arena. Alphas as the variable. Human teams as the input. Each run sends in a new crew with the same profile. They collect data, how the Alpha King reacts, how fast the infection spreads, what triggers aggression, what a queen protects. Then the nuke wipes the board and resets the experiment. That is why the plan feels familiar. That is why the betrayals feel inevitable. Someone designed a scenario where humans keep making the same mistakes because predictability is the point. Sure, it could all be visual coincidence, or it could be the movie quietly telling you the scariest thing in Vegas is not the zombies. If this is a loop, who is watching the results?